So you've already actually started solving one-step equations. We haven't really gotten into the two-step equations, but I thought it would be good to at least introduce them here. And while we're at it, we're also going to confirm all those steps that we've already kind of started to do. So when we solve equations, we always ask, what's the opposite? Just like when we, when we backtrack through a flow chart, it's the same thing, same question. And when we do this, it's important that we keep things balanced. I like to think of it as a seesaw, but the important thing to remember that is that the way that we keep it balanced is we do the same thing on both sides of the equation. So I'm sure we've all tried to balance with a friend on a seesaw, and it's the same type of thing. Okay, so here we are. This says 4n. I'm starting with this one right here. 4n equals 24. 4n. When a number is next to a variable, that means multiplication. So that's what it is right now. And we ask, what's the opposite? Always, what's the opposite? It's always the question. So what is the opposite of multiplication? You should know that it's division. Multiplying by 4, so I divide by 4. Now remember, we are in 7th grade. This is how we show division. We're dividing on both sides of the equal sign. Remember to keep things even. I know on this side, 4 divided by 4 just cancels out. I'm left with n by itself. And 24 divided by 4 is 6. So I know that that is my answer. N is equal to 6. And if I go back up there and check, that says 4 times 6 is equal to 24, which is exactly what I should be. So that means I did this correctly. Okay, so same thing, same question. What's the opposite? Well, this is plus 18. What's the opposite of plus 18? Well, of course, that's minus 18 on both sides. Now, when we add and subtract, I like to actually draw that. And there, in this way, you can kind of see the seesaw. These are the two sides of the seesaw. And we want to make sure that none of them, one side isn't heavier than the other. So by subtracting 18 from both sides, we've done the exact same thing. And it doesn't mess with the balance of things. Here we've got plus 18 minus 18. And that's going to give me 0. So the only thing I'm now left with is f equals 30 minus 18. That's an easy one to do in our head. 30 minus 10 is 20. Take away 8 more. The answer is 12. So I have learned that f equals 12. And again, if I check it, that says 12 plus 18 is, of course, 30. It is correct. It's always nice to check your work. Make sure that you haven't made a foolish or a silly computational error. So, next thing, let's see what we have. Some more examples. Some more one-step equations. So we cover all the different types. This says r minus 5 equals 16. Again, I'm going to draw my little seesaw. And I always say, what's the opposite? What's the opposite of minus 5? That, of course, is plus 5. On both sides, to keep my seesaw even, plus 5 minus 5, those cancel out. I'm left with r on this side equals 16 plus 5 is 21. If I want to check that, I do 21 minus 5. If I take 5 away from 21, I do in fact get 16. So that means that r is equal to 21. Now over here I've got v divided by 4 equals 10. What's the opposite of divide by 4? Well, of course, it's multiply times 4. Now, this one does look a little bit different than the others that we've done because we're going out to the side. The reason we do this is so that we can see, of course, we would put this over 1. Those 4's cancel. I'm left with v equals 10 times 4 is 40. Let's go ahead and do that check. I've got 40 divided by 4. That is 10, which is what it says here. So that means my answer is correct, and v, in fact, equals 40. Now, it's most important that you master the one-step equations at this point. I'm introducing the two-step equations so that you can see them and start to get familiar with them. The most important thing that you definitely need to know how to do is those one-step equations. So here we are with our two-step equations. We're still asking that same question, what's the opposite? And the difference here is that we've got two steps or two operations that we're looking at. So we're reversing out, we're backtracking. Remember we talked about that story of the variable, and we want to go backwards. So from the last thing that was done to the variable, that's where we're going to start. So in other words, we know if we were going forward with the order of operations, you would multiply before subtracting. So therefore, if we're going backwards, we're going to address that subtraction first. So what's the opposite of minus 3? Opposite of minus 3 is plus 3. It's a seesaw, keep it on both sides. Plus 3, or minus 3 plus 3, that cancels out. I'm left with 2g equals 27 plus 3 is 30. So now I have to do it again. What's the opposite again? Well, this is 2g. That means 2 times g. What's the opposite of multiplication? That would be division. I'm multiplying by 2, so I'm going to divide by 2, both sides, to keep it balanced. These 2's cancel. I'm left with g equals 30 divided by 2 is 15. Let's take a look at that check now. I substitute it would be 2 times 15 minus 3. 2 times 15 is 30 minus 3. That's 27, which is exactly what it should be. So g, in fact, is equal to 15. Try another one here. Same thing. Now remember, I'm going backwards. So what's the first thing I address? Well, of course, it's going to be that plus 12. What's the opposite of plus 12? That would be minus 12 on both sides. Keep things balanced. Plus 12 minus 12 cancel out. So that means I'm left with z divided by 5 equals 20 minus 12 is 8. So now I say to myself, what is the opposite of divide by 5? Of course, that's multiply times 5 both sides. These would cancel. It's 5 over 1 because I'm multiplying. I need to make sure they're both fractions. Those cancel. I'm left with z on this side equals 8 times 5 is 40. If I wanted to check it, I would do 40 divided by 5 plus 12. 40 divided by 12 I know is 8 plus 12 equals 20, which is what it says up top. Means I'm correct. My answer is z equals 40. A couple more examples before we're done here. We'll start with 7 plus 4k. Now this one looks different, but it's still basically the same thing. What would you do first if you were going forward? Well, you should know that you would multiply first. So that means if I was going forward, if I knew the value of k, I would start with that and multiply first and then add. But I don't know what it is. I'm going backwards to figure out what happened to k along, to get it to the final solution. So that means I'm going to do the opposite of 7. You're like, what's the opposite of 7? Well, remember that really is a positive 7. What's the opposite of positive 7? It's negative 7. Negative 7, both sides. Negative 7 minus 7, they mean the same thing. Positive 7 minus 7, those cancel. I'm left with 4k equals 43 take away 7. Well, if I take 3 away from 43, that gets me to 30. So that means there's 4 left out of the 7. Take that 4 that's left away from the 40, it gets me to 36. What's the opposite of times 4? Of course, it's divide by 4, both sides. These cancel. I'm left with k equals 36 divided by 4 is 9. Come on over here and do that check. 7 plus 4 times 9. 4 times 9 is 36. 7 plus 36 is 43, just like I want it to be. There's the answer. K equals 9. Okay, next thing. Same process here. I'm going to start with the subtract 5. What's the opposite of minus 5? Or 5, that's not 5, that's 15, so sorry. plus 15 on both sides. These cancel. I'm left with m divided by 10 equals, now I've got a negative number here. I know how to deal with those integers. We spent a lot of time at the beginning of the year on that. So negative 6 plus 15. I'm adding. Signs are different. Find the difference. Those rules still apply here. So the difference between 6 and 15, 15 minus 6 is 9. The larger absolute value would be the 15, so it's positive. It's good. I still have to deal with the divide by 10. What's the opposite of divide by 10? It would be times 10 on both sides. Times 10 on both sides. These 10's cancel. I'm left with m equals 9 times 10 is 90. So m should equal 90 if I did this correctly. Let me just fix that so it's clearer. Sorry about that. 90. So let's go and check that work, make sure. So m is 90, so that's 90 divided by 10 minus 15. 90 divided by 10 is 9 minus 15. Stay, change, cha-cha-cha. The signs are different. Find the difference. The difference of 15 and 9 is 6. The larger absolute value is 15, so it's negative 6, which is exactly what it was up here. So therefore, I am correct that m is equal to 90.